Well, we're back. This is part two of how did we get here, I guess I'll say. I was telling in the last part, if you watch that, that basically where I came from a nominal church upbringing to a point where I was a believer. I'd been filled with the Holy Spirit and lived 24 some odd years as a believer. And then one day, somehow, through circumstances, I won't go into all the detail, I ended up meeting a guy who, it turns out, was a pastor slash teacher of a fairly new congregation not far from where I lived. And he was actually really versed in the Hebrew and the Hebraic roots of the Bible. And that was his forte, or something he'd been studying and working on for some 14 or 15 years. Now, I have no qualms about telling you, it's a guy by the name of Mark Biltz, B-I-L-T-Z. He's got his own ministry under El Shaddai Ministries.us. I'm not affiliated with him. I still consider him a friend, but I'm not part of his congregation. And for anybody watching, I am not part of any denomination. I don't even know what I would call myself other than I'm a Bible-believing follower of the God of Israel. Again, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to know what is your little box that you fit in. And be honest with you, there's not a title or name or classification that I'm comfortable with or that I like. But in short, this Mark, he shared with me some really cool things, and I would refer you to his website, but it's gotten so big over the years, I don't know where you would go to look at some of this stuff. Maybe I'll find a way to show some of it. But he actually went through, for example, he showed me by using the Hebrew names of the generations, I think it was the 10 or 14, probably 10 generations from Adam down to, say, well, I don't even know if it was Noah or whatever, but say the first 10 names of the generations in the beginning of the book of Genesis, and how each name in Hebrew, when you find out what the Hebrew name means, it spelled out the gospel. Now, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't want to butcher it. I don't know if Mark came up with it himself or he found it somewhere else, but either way, he shared that, and I was like, my gosh, it was amazing. And he was saying that there's so much depth to the Hebrew language, and the Hebrew that the Old Testament was written in has some 70 layers of understanding that you could find, and it was just incredible. And of course, that was a really neat thing at the moment, but I didn't know what to do with it. And without going into a lot of different little circumstances or things that eventually led me to start going to his congregation, it turns out Mark was, I'd call him an expert on the chapter in the Bible, Leviticus, in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. And it's just titled in my Bible and probably most of yours, it's just called The Feasts of the Lord. So Leviticus 23, not that you have to turn there now, I'm not conducting a church service here, but in my book it just says the appointed feasts. But just to give you an example, I'm reading it real quick. It says, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts." We'll just stop there. That's the first two verses of Leviticus 23. And Mark, it turns out, had been studying for, I think, 15 years just the depth of the feasts of the Lord, how they were carried out in biblical times, how the children of Israel did or did not keep them during the time after the Exodus, and then in the wilderness, and then when they came into the land of Israel afterwards with Joshua and all. And he had done a lot of searching and was able to give us all kinds of details. And he was able to point out, and again, this little video today is not just about the feasts, but I want you to know he was able to show how there's actually, some say 8, but let's say 7 feasts of the Lord, not of the Jews, not of anybody else. I mean, just God's feasts, for lack of a better term. That's exactly how it's termed. The Lord has appointed these feasts. These are the holy days he wanted all people that would follow him to keep and understand. Now, if you know anything about them, you know they involved, sacrifices, animals being brought, and the blood spilt, and all these different things. And it doesn't take a genius to know that, okay, here in 2014 America, there is no temple in the world. Jerusalem temple is not standing these days, and the Bible is clear. That's the only place we could go to make sacrifices, to offer, to properly keep the feasts of the Lord. We'd have to have a temple, an appropriate and legitimate priesthood in Jerusalem, and all of that. But we don't have that right now. We're waiting for God to do it again, however he's going to make that happen. But as this Mark taught, it was amazing. But God said that these are my feasts, my special appointed times when I want to meet with my people. And he said that they were to keep them forever. Now, he didn't say keep them until the Messiah comes, and then he will do away with it and change everything. He said, keep them forever. And I came to learn over the next couple years, as I learned about the feasts, but then also his main thrust was to teach Christians the first 5 books of the Bible. He went through what is called by the Jewish people and by anybody that knows the Torah, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I'm not trying to be talking down to anyone, but some people may not know. But anyhow, he went through and actually would start at Genesis 1:1, and each week we would meet on a Saturday, not a Sunday, but we would meet on a Saturday, and for a couple of hours we would have a service, and he would go through, basically you were expected to read the maybe 5 or 6, 8 chapters, whatever it might be, read them at home, maybe less than that, but anyhow, you would read what's called the Torah portion each week, and then Mark would teach on it each week, and as it went, you just learned things that you thought you knew, but you didn't really understand, and it was amazing, things that I had never read before. I never had gone through with any paying attention at all, the book of Leviticus. Numbers, it sounds, doesn't even sound exciting just by the title, but Deuteronomy, I knew that those things were referenced in the New Testament. I knew that Jesus, Yeshua, quoted from Deuteronomy a lot, and those kind of things. I was not ignorant of the Bible, but I was absolutely ignorant of the first 5 books and a lot of, the subsequent stuff. But the beauty of it was that by going through each week and reading portions of the Old Testament, I started learning things that I'd never learned before, and there were things that God said he wanted his people to remember and do forever. And the word is not wishy-washy at all in the Hebrew. It's very clearly forever. And if you remember, Jesus said, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. And now you could say, oh, that's just the things that he quoted, but I think if you stay tuned over time, you'll find that I think he was very clear that all the things he said and taught and did were shown to him by the Father, were basically revealed to him by the Father. I mean, he had come, not just some guy that decided, I want to be the Messiah. If anybody believes that, you don't know what the Bible teaches. But it was foretold for centuries that a Messiah was coming, a great Redeemer was going to come, like unto Moses, and the people were told, you better listen to him. And that's who Yeshua is. That's who Jesus is. You'll learn eventually nothing wrong with the name Jesus, except it's just a translation or transliteration of a Greek translation of what his name in Hebrew would have been Yehoshua, what we would equate to Joshua in English, but nobody called him Joshua, obviously, but the short version of his name that his mother probably called him. And if you remember the movie The Passion of the Christ, his mother referred to him as Yeshua. And that word, as you'll come to find if you don't already know, that word in Hebrew actually means salvation. Or his full name, Yehoshua, really translates to Yehovah, which is the name of the Father, will save, or Yehovah saves. I'm not a scholar, and I've listened to some incredible teachers that are scholars, so I've gleaned from them, and at some point I'll refer you guys to some books that I think are incredible. They're easy to read, they're simple explanations of how God's name, how I believe they've shown through their scholarship and archaeology and research how God's name is pronounced. There's no question in my mind how Yeshua's name, should be pronounced. There's so much depth to it, and I'm not here to just repeat everything that I've learned from other people. My job is not to be a teacher. I don't think God gave me that gift by any means. He gave me a mouth to speak forth truth from His Word in whatever way I can. Okay, and that's all I'm trying to do here. But just to get back to this stage of my life where I started reading through the Torah week by week throughout the year, and then I found out, what? The cycle just starts right over again. When the year ends and you get through the end of Deuteronomy, it's usually it's always in the fall of the year. Then we start again, Genesis 1:1, and you go again. And what's interesting is any Jewish congregation that's actually reading the Bible, any groups around the world that might be Messianic, might be Hebrew roots, there's all these different terms out there now. Almost all of them go through the same kind of format where they'll read, almost always it lines up, they'll read the same portion of the Bible, the same exact week. So any given Saturday, if you're in a church that's doing this, or a synagogue or something like that, or just at your home and you have a list of the portions listed out by dates, you can be reading the exact same passage that thousands of people all over the world are reading. I mean, to me, that was pretty exciting. I'm going to hold up something for